Good evening, everyone. Again, we will start with a short mindful breathing exercise meditation, watching your breath mindfully for a few moments. Then we can try to have a good motivation, intention of being here. We can do it by us coming together to listen and to engage in discussion, reflection, contemplation. And all this room cause and condition and help to understand the nature of ourselves, nature of our mind, and all phenomena more deeply, more profoundly. So that with that understanding, we can overcome those afflictive emotions, especially the root of all those afflictive emotions. And may we always be helpful, beneficial, directly, indirectly. And at least, even when we cannot be help and benefit, at least may we never harm others intentionally. And may this understanding help us to progress on the path and to achieve our highest potential, fully awakened state. So we can be not only help, the greatest help, and not only few, but to each and every sentient being. Okay. So,
to the founder, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct. Sugata, knower of the world.
The founder, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond the fourth destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme God, the human beings, became teachers of God and human beings to you, the complete and fully awakened one, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the glorious hunter, the subduer from Shakya, plain, I prostate, make offering, and go for rescue. Homage to the Supreme Buddha, homage to the Dharma rescue, homage to the great Sangha, to all give reward homage, to all worthy of respect, bowing with as bodies as many of all friends as in all aspects, to the Supreme State, I pay homage. Do not commit any non-virtuous action, perform only perfect virtuous action. Subdue your mind thoroughly. This is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a visual apprehension, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew, a bubble, a dream, a flash of lightning, a color, deconditioned things as such. Through this marriage, may sentient beings attain the rank of all seeing, subdue the four falls, and be delivered from samsara's ocean, perturbed by the wave of aging, sickness, and death. I prostrate
to the Arya Triple Gem. Thus did I hear at one time the Bhagavan was dwelling on massive Vulture's Mountain in Rajagriha, together with a great community of monks and a great community of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Bhagavan was absorbed in the concentration on the categories of phenomena called profound perception. Also at that time, the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya Avalokiteshvara looked upon the very practice of the profound perfection of wisdom and beheld those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Then, through the power of the Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra said this to the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya Avalokiteshvara. How should any son of the lineage train who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom? He said that, and the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya Avalokiteshvara said this to the Venerable Shariputra. Shariputra, any son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom should look upon it like this, correctly and repeatedly beholding those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Form is empty, emptiness is form, emptiness is not other than form, form is also not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, likewise, all phenomena are emptiness, without characteristic, unproduced, unceased, stainless, not without stain, not deficient, not fulfilled. Shariputra, therefore, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no visual form, no sound, no odor, no taste, no object of touch, and no phenomena. There is no I element, and so on, up to and including no mind element and no mental consciousness element. There is no ignorance, no extinction of ignorance, and so on, up to and including no aging and death, and no extinction of aging and death. Similarly, there's no suffering, origination, cessation, and path. There is no exalted wisdom, no attainment, and also no non-attainment. Shariputra, therefore, because there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and dwell in the perfection of wisdom, the mind without obscuration and without fear. Having completely passed beyond error, they reach the end point of nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in 3 times also manifestly completely awaken to unsurpassable, perfect, complete enlightenment in reliance on the perfection of wisdom. Therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra equal to the unequaled, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering, should be known as truth, since it is not false. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is declared. Taya ta om gate gate para parasam gate bodhi soha. Shariputra, the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, should train in the profound perfection of wisdom like that. Then the Bhagavan arose from that concentration and commended the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya Avalokiteshvara, saying, well said, son of the lineage, it is like that, it is like that. One should practice the profound perfection of wisdom just as you have indicated. Even the Tathagatas rejoice. The Bhagavan, having thus spoken, the Venerable Sharivati Putra, the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya Avalokiteshvara, and those surrounding in their entirety along the world of gods, humans, asuras, and Gandhars were overjoyed and highly praised that spoken by the Bhagavan. Sajipu ki jushing meto Tram ri rahapling ji ni degen padi sange jing du mi te Wahi Drokunam Dakshin La Choparsho Idam Gururatna Mandalakam Niryatayami. I go for refuge and till I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. Sangye choran soki chonam la chanchu bardu dagni kapsu chi dagi chonen gipe sonam gi jola penshir sangye drupar shuk sangye choran soki chonam la chanchu bardu dagni kapsu chi dagi chonen gipe sonam gi Jola Penshir Sangye Druparsho.
So we have been going through this during the Wednesday evening. This particular text by Nagarjuna, and it go through the explanations of the nature of the truth according to different school of thought. Starting with non-Buddhist school of thought. And then within the Buddhist school of thought, there are 4 different Buddhist school of thought. And then in the second, the first 2, the Bapasika Swatandya school of thought, and which, while their presentation of some of the nature of the self or the selflessness is common, but also there are certain presentation that has that has been kind of negated by the mind-only schools, and we are in that path, negating the idea that there is a external objects that is started by, heartless particles. And by rejecting with the reasoning logic that there is no heartless particles that create, or that is the basis for all the physical external form or objects. So we are in that section. So this particular Wednesday class, especially this one, it will be a little bit like going to school. You have to do a little bit of kind of homework to really, understand, because it's kind of philosophical, And we finished up to verse number 18, and we are in verse number 19. And so again, the other two earlier school of thoughts, because they believe that there is particles, that is the basis for all the physical form or matter, and therefore, there is a external object there from its own side, and so that is their view. There is an external object from its own side that is, accumulated or come into existence by on the basis of that heartless. And they have this idea or belief or idea, that when that external objects appear to the mind, it appears to the mind from objectively without any aspect in between, like, very directly, and so therefore, everything that appeared to your mind is sense consciousness, is that there is an external object that appear to your sense consciousness without anything in between, anything, like a direct or negate, without any aspect. And so that idea also being rejected by the mind-only schools. And so that is where it is in verse number 19. With respect to the single external object, okay, any external object, divergence, perception can arise. So here the point is making, if it is coming nothing to do with your mind, but it is coming from objective from its own side, appearing without any in between, without any aspect, then the mind-only school is saying, then how it is possible in relation to one single external object, they can have many different perceptions. It's like, if you have many mirror and then there is one object that appear, and that reflections of that objects to all mirror will be same instead of different. If it is nothing to do with from that mirror, if everything is coming from that external object. But here he's saying, then if that is the case, how can there be, even relating to one single object, external object, how can there be a different perception? It's not possible, he's saying. So therefore here, in that example, a form that is beautiful to someone, any object, we can say flower or any external object, that might appear to someone's mind beautiful, or someone, perceived to be beautiful. For someone else, it is something else. For someone else, it might not be so beautiful, attractive. For someone, it might be even maybe very ugly and very unpleasant. So therefore, there can be many different perceptions or different mind in relation to the same object. So that clearly shows it's coming from your mind instead of from an external object, as you say. If everything is coming from an external object without any kind of the mirror of the mind, then it should be same to everyone. If everyone should see some same way, everyone should see same. But that is not the case. That is direct experience. We don't see everything the same object in the same way. So that is one. So therefore, through that again, negating this idea of the object existing external from its own side and appearing from its own side externally. And then another example here giving, with respect to the same female bodies, of course, the female body, male bodies, very different notions are intertwined, very different perception notion could arise. By ascetic, someone, who have no attachment, to the body, and through their meditation, they might see it almost like corpse, dead body. Just as you don't get attached to the dead body, some way, that not getting attached to the body for the lustful one and someone who has very strong attachment, strong desire, for them, it could appear and it will appear as object of lust or desire. And wild dogs, Kaido, what do you call Kaido, or no, what? Coyote, sorry. For a coyotes, that it might appear a food, something to eat. So basically, it's giving, again, he gives here the example with same object externally, even though there is one single external object, it can appear and different to different individuals. All those different individuals can perceive differently, but if it is all coming from external object by itself, that shouldn't be the cases. It should be appear same to everyone. And it is in sameness of object that functions. I've said that if this is not like being harmed in a dream. So when you talk in a dream, you might have different dreams, pleasant dream, unpleasant dream, maybe you might have, very frightening dream, someone attacking you, chasing, attacking you, and because of that dream, you might have different emotions, fear, frightening, panic. So one can experience those different experiences, or you can have a very nice dream, and very joyful, pleasant, joyful dream, and then you have different emotions, very joyful instead of fearful, happy and joyful emotions. So those different emotions could arise due to the appearance of different dreams in your mind. But even though we experience differently because of different dreams, but there is nothing externally really happening there. There's not really person chasing you. There's no really persons that you are trying to, let's say, hug you or which give you a good feelings. There's no really person who's hugging you that give you a good feeling. There's no person who's really chasing you that give you that. But we experience different experience because of those different dreams, even though there's nothing external there real. So here they are saying, in same way, between the dream and awakeful, even in awakeful state, there is no difference in so far as the functioning of things is concerned. So same thing they're saying, even though awakened state, someone might hug you, give and due to that, or say nice things, or does something good to you that give you joy, happiness. On the other hand, someone might be, nasty, abusive, you know, whatever, and that can make you very, disturbed, unhappy, pain, So even though you could experience that, but here they're saying, even in that awakened state, there is no real, from my holy school point of view, even though you experience different experience in relation to in coming contact with those different individual, different actions or behavior, but there is nothing in so over that exists from its own side externally, the way it appeared to us, just like in a dream. Do you get it? What point that he's trying to make? In the dream, even though there's no real person chasing you, you still have fear. Or when someone, in same way, over, he said, even when you're awake, there's no really external object there that is chasing you or being abusive that lead you to be very pain and suffering, or neither. There's no real external objects that is saying good things or hugging you that may give you that. So he's saying it's same in term of, there's no external object. On both, in both cases, whether it's a dream or whether it is in awake state, in terms of giving rise to different emotion, that functioning, giving rise to different functioning in whatsoever, there's no difference, So therefore, from that point of view, again, rejecting the idea that there is external object there, So therefore, so in next verse 22, he said, in terms of object and subject, So, whatever object, whatever subject of consciousness mind, everything that appears, everything that exists, all phenomena, all phenomena, everything that exists that include within the subject and object, whatever appears to the consciousness, whatever, whether it's a external or internal object that appear to your consciousness mind, whatever appear to your consciousness, apart from the cognition themselves, no external object exists anywhere. And so there's this, they say, whatever appeared in your mind is all perception of your mind, is all projection of your mind, is all coming from your mind, cognitive. There's nothing external object. So that is no external object exists anywhere. So that is the view of mind holy school thought, And so again, due to our imprint within our mind, then different objects appear to the mind. Okay. But all these different appearance that is appearing to our mind is all coming from the imprint that is within your mind that is being created or imprinted by the mind itself. So in that way, everything comes from the mind, you know. Because of the imprint, their view is, within your mind consciousness, there's an imprint, and one side, that one imprint appear as the external object, and one part of that imprint appear as the mind consciousness that perceive that object. So both of that, the subject and object, the external object, the form, and the mind that perceive that, both of them come through same imprint. It's coming from the same imprint that is created by the mind itself. So therefore, there's no external object from there, but it is due to your imprint, and then it appeared your mind to exist from externally, but it is not there. And of course, within that, then there's different, discussions, whether there's a common object that appear to everyone, or there's no common object that appear to everyone. Even though glass that appear to my mind is different glass from that glass that appear to your mind, because of our different imprint. So is there a common where that appear to everyone, or is there no common, that everything is individual oneself? There is a different view on that among different scholars. Some says there is a common that appear to everyone, and then there's the individual. Let's say take a glass. There's a glass that appear to everyone's consciousness who look at that glass, and uncommon glass that appear to only my mind, which doesn't appear to others' mind, and there the mind. And then there are some who say there is no common, but it's all individual. But anyway, among the different scholars and that, but basically, in mind holy school, their view is that everything is coming from your mind and from your consciousness, and therefore there's nothing that exists externally from its own side by itself. That is the view. What? I think maybe normally I would like to have it on the end so we can pass. Otherwise, yeah, if we can hold on that. So then we have someone to pass. Otherwise, people there cannot hear again, and I cannot repeat. So that is the meaning here. So there are no external. Then verse number 29, continuing. So there are no external objects at all existing in the mode of entity, from its own mode by itself in the nature by existing external form. The very perceptions of individual consciousness arise as an appearance of form. So it is not that there is external form, but it is your consciousness appearing as a form. So as I mentioned before, that one side of the is like your imprint that's created the mind is divided into two. One appears as the form, and one appears as the consciousness that's receiving the form. Therefore, both the external objects and the subject, the mind, they both come from same consciousness and same imprint. And therefore, they both are creation or projection or productions of the mind, and there's nothing external out there, right? Mm. In the Mind Holy School, in their studies, they explain, sometimes about many different imprint that is within our consciousness. The imprint that produce, for example, a flower, let's say flower. There is an imprint to appear as a flower from the past. When you look at flowers, then blue flowers, then that imprint lead to arising or the blue or appearance or arising on that blue flowers. And then there is, the imprint of verbalizations, which is a thought when you say, so there is appearance of the blue flower because of that particular similar predisposition or imprint. And then there is another imprint, that arises, which says, oh, this is blue flower, or this is this and this and that, Again, that to give some kind of term or label or description with the concept, or this is that, this is blue, this is flower, this is blue flower, Again, that having that thought is also arising from the particular imprint of that. And then there is imprint of, the appearance of that object as existing itself, selfhood by the imprint, there is a self appearance of the object to exist from its own side, and then we externally, and then we grasp, and due to that imprint, again, then when the object appear, not only the object, let's say blue flower, there's appearance of blue flower, and later then we say, oh, this is a blue flower, and so on. And then not only that, then there is appearance also that flower to exist from Mind Holy School, existing objectively or externally by itself, and it is also through the previous imprint. So all of these different appearance to your different consciousness, those different appearance, they all are coming from, all from the mind, from the imprint predisposition that is imprinted by the mind, within the mind. And then again, giving more example of that, how things do not exist necessarily because they appear that way. Just because to our mind, the external object, the flower, appear to exist externally, objectively, externally from its own side there, externally, but it doesn't mean that is how it exists. Just because there is that appearance, it doesn't mean that, because, not all the time the appearance is correct. What appear to our mind is not always the truth, not always right, So he gives examples. So the next one, 24, with some of those examples. Just a person whose mind is deluded, see magical illusion and mirage, Also someone, from distant in certain conditions, as I mentioned, sudden lightning, maybe there is sudden things in the, sudden, I don't know what you call this shiny thing, you find in a sand, some small, what do you call, they are very shiny and very, and it makes almost like, that image of water, kind of like when water is simmering, like. So from distance and with certain lightning and with certain condition, then one might see, oh, there is water. One might feel, one might see as there being a water. But that is just a mirage. There's no real water. There is that appearance because of certain conditions. Certain conditions, but that appearance is not a reality. There's no real water there. Even though it appeared to be water. So that is one example. Magical illusion, someone create magical illusion, again, due to whatever, substance, mantras or whatever different trick he or she create to create that kind of magical illusion. But again, this is just a trick. It's not necessarily is really there what you see, created by that magical illusion. That appearance, the deception, that appearance, both a mirage and magical illusion, is just a deception. Even though to our mind, when you look at it, it looks, real there. Whatever is happening in that illusion, it feels like it is really happening there. When you see that mirage, you see there is really water. But that doesn't mean in reality there is that. There's water and there is, the magical illusions is created some kind of bird. Not necessarily there is a bird, it is just a trick, So that, and the cities of Gandharva spirit, and again, also this is, you find in Indian scriptures, where sometimes from distance, sometimes you see there is a kind of almost like a town, a lot of people, but it's just some kind of illusion. When you go there, it's not really there. From distance, it feel like it describes, it feel like when you look, there is town, there is a lot of people, a lot of others, but actually when you go, there's nothing there, So it's just another illusion, another deception of the appearance. So just like that, so too the form and so on are received. So just like that, and he's saying, just like those examples, also the form, even the form appear to our mind as existing externally, from its own side externally, from its objective side externally by itself, but also that is a deception. Also that is, not a reality, so that appearance, so that is not reality. And forms, and so any all others, not only form, everything's, everything's that appear to our mind, it's just perception of our mind, perception of our mind, So next one, 25, is a question arise, as I mentioned in one of the previous class, in the first turning wheel of the Dharma, in some not whole turning wheel, because I said in first turning wheel of Dharma there are many sutras. Same with second turning wheel, there are many sutras, and within some sutras, that are part of first turning wheel of the Dharma, that the first two schools of Buddhism, Buddhist school of thought, rely on those sources. It is explained almost as though the aggregates, such as the five aggregates, um, and then the 12 senses or sense faculties, and 18 elements, and so forth. Those objects were explained almost as though there is an external object, as though there is an external object. It was explained as though also almost as it is external object. So then the question arises: didn't Buddha say? So they're arguing with mind holy school. Now they are saying, didn't Buddha explain that? Didn't Buddha say in some of those sutras as though they are existing externally, which you are refuting now? So that is why I know. And then mind holy school is saying, yes, Buddha taught that, but there's a reason to taught that. You can't take it literally, those ones. And there's a reason to Buddha to teach that way. So that's why to overcome grasping at selfhood, the Buddha taught aggregate elements, so on. So that is what the mind holy school is saying. The reason why Buddha taught that is for certain disciples, certain individuals, because they see there's an external object there, and there is stronger grasping because of that believing there is a yeah, believing that there is external objects. So mind holy school is saying to them, Buddha explained that in order to overcome some disciple to grasping of the selfhood, in a way, when you see there is something like external objects, then you have more stronger grasping and growth level of grasping. And in order to overcome that, maybe first, let me say, in order to eliminate the gross grasping of self to exist permanently and partless and autonomous, in order to destroy that, grasping of self in that way, then Buddha taught, how, the self exists by depending on aggregate. There's no autonomous self, but self only exists by depending on aggregate element and sense faculty and so forth. There's no autonomous self. There's no heartless self. There's no permanent self. So in order to help some of the disciples to let go of those strong grasping of the self, then Buddha taught such aggregates, elements, and so forth, which by explaining how the self exists by depending on them, and as almost that the externally there, but that is for that reason, and then in some sutras, in some other sutras, which the mind holy school rely on as an authentic source for their view, then Buddha negated in that they explain how everything is merely in the nature of the mind, nothing exists externally. And the reason that is, again, to let go of the strong grasping. When you see, or when you think, when you perceive the aggregate element and whatever object we exist externally there, objectively externally there, again you have stronger grasping. And in order to overcome those strong grasping, then Buddha explained there's nothing that exists externally, where everything is projections of your mind, everything coming from your mind. So that is where. So by abiding in the state of mind only, and that is how, so that is the view of mind only school. The view of mind only school is there's no external objects. Everything is coming from your mind. Everything is coming from projection of the mind. Everything's in the nature of the mind. So that is by abiding the state of mind only. So that is the view of the mind only school. That is the view of the mind only school. The being of great fortune even renounced that teaching. And so here is saying the being of great fortune, those disciples who are ripening and who have the capacity to understand the final thought of the Buddha, the ultimate thought of the Buddha, the middle way, for those are the great fortune. With the being of great fortune means those who have the karmic imprint from the past, whose mind is ripened, whose mind had the capacity to understand the middle way school view, that the Buddha's final view, Nagarjuna's views, for that, for them, they even renounce or they even reject some of the mind only school views. The mind only school views. So they reject or refute even the mind only school view. Okay. With each of school, they don't refute everything the previous school has said, There are a lot of things common, they don't refute that. But then sudden views within each of school that doesn't seem accurate to the other schools, that is where they refute and reject, and same with that here. And we will come later, yeah, maybe it will come later. So again, next is 26, verse number 26. For those profound consciousness only, so those who profound or who hold mind only school view, this your mind only school views, this manifold world, this manifold world, samsara, nirvana, external world, internal world, subject, object, self, others, manifold world, all of them is established by mind only. Their view is that all this manifold world is creation of the mind, all coming from the mind. There's nothing that comes externally from objective side. There's nothing that comes objectively or external from its own side. Everything is so, all of them are in the nature of the mind. All of them are in the nature of the mind. All of them are same substance as the mind. There's no difference. The consciousness and the form, all this world are all coming from the mind. All. What might be the nature of that consciousness? I shall now explain in this very point. So it might be, what might be the nature of that consciousness? Mind Only School has another thought, another view, that they have this view of self-cognizer, the idea of the mind, so-called self-cognizer. And they have to come with that ideas like all the Buddhist school of thought to establish something exists. Because of course this is again object of a lot of discussion, thought among philosophers, thinkers. How do you define something exists or not? And so to define anything to exist, then they all come to same conclusion, agreement that there need to be a valid cognizer, a mind which is valid cognizer that perceives the object. If there is a valid cognizer that perceives the mind, then you can define that object exists because there is a valid cognizer that perceives the object. So then what about the consciousness itself? How do you define, okay, let's say this iPad. How do you define the iPad exists? The iPad can be defined as existing because there is a, valid eye consciousness that perceives there's a valid eye consciousness that perceives the iPad. Therefore, it can be established as existing. But how can you establish that valid eye consciousness that perceives that? How can that be established as existing? Then that when it comes to that, then they have different views on different school of thought. Then some of come, there is another mind that perceives that mind. Okay. There is another mind that perceives that mind. Valid cognizer consciousness that perceives that mind. And then to establish that exists, you have to have another. So then it becomes endless. It becomes endless. So then it becomes endless. Then you lose the very, the purpose at the very beginning. You will not be able to establish this iPad exists because you keep on going and it becomes endless. So in order to, they see a fault in that. They see a fault in that ideas, that view, that kind of philosophy. And so Mind Only School come with this concept of self-cognizance. While the eye consciousness perceives the iPad, there's a consciousness there is a self-cognizer consciousness at the same time that perceives that consciousness. So you don't need another consciousness that to establish that, but there is already within that mind, there is a self-cognizer. And that self-cognizer is the one that received that mind and to establish that. And so this is, and Nagarjuna refuted that view of such self-cognizers, so that is where what might be the nature of that consciousness, that political consciousness. I shall now explain this point, So, and from Nagarjuna point of view, or the middle way school of thought, they say, you don't have to have all this complicating, you don't have to come with all this complicating idea of self-cognizer, other cognizer, consciousness, all of that. Because everything is dependent arising. Because there's a dependent arising, the subject and object are dependent arising. No? When there's object, there's subject. When there's subject, there's object. You can establish there is subject because there's object. You can establish there's object because there's subject. They are mutually dependent arising. So therefore, you don't have to need an endless consciousness, perceive one consciousness, nor you need this idea of self-cognizers. You can define something exists by existing other objects because they are mutually dependent arising. You cannot establish the object to exist if there is no subject that perceives that. And you cannot, there is no object, you cannot establish the object to exist if there is no subject that perceives that. And on the same way, you cannot perceive there is a subject that perceives the object if there's no object. So therefore, so that is how middle way schools explain without all this complication through the understanding of mutual dependent arising. And therefore kind of reject this this kind of consciousness. And then, so next questions arises. Now the questions from the minor holy school to the middle way school, if you refute, this idea how there's no external objects and that everything is coming from the mind, everything is the nature of the mind, but there's nothing external there, then how come the Buddha has said everything is in some sutras, say all the three worlds, are created by the mind or in the nature of the mind, Also in some sutra he said, there is no external object, all in the nature of the mind. So what about that? So they bring that. So all of this is but one's mind. So that is in sutra. That is one of the quotations that they take from sutra, where Buddha says, all of this, all the worlds, everything's manifold world, everything's. This is but one's mind. It's all coming from one's mind. In the nature of mind, there's no external, So what about those sutras? Why did Buddha say that? So then to answer that, then Nagarjuna or middle way school says, that which has been stated by the able one, the Buddha, in some of the sutras, such statement, is to elevate the fear of childish. It's not a statement of final truth. So He's saying, that is not the final Buddha's own thought or the truth. The reason the Buddha taught that is to help certain sentient beings that they have strong fear because of belief there is an external object. There is a strong attachment because of belief that there is a external object. There is a strong aversions or anger because of belief that there is external object. So in order to help to overcome such strong attachment, strong or growth, strong attachment, anger, fear, so forth, on the basis of believing that there is external object. So in order to help to overcome those gross level of such negative feelings or emotions, then Buddha taught everything in the nature of mind, everything coming from mind, there's no external object. And when you meditate on that there's no external objects. When you are attached to any external object, when you have aversion to any external object, when there's a fear coming from because there is belief there is external object. When you meditate and when you try to see there's no external object that give rise to the fear. There's no external object that give rise to the anger and attachment. When you see all of them are coming from your mind, there's no external object. It does help. It does help to reduce those strong gross level of fear, attachment, and delusion. That is why. So again, it is a skillful means leading from one meditation to, presentation of growth level of first starting with growth level of selflessness and then presenting more subtle level. The presentation of this kind of selflessness is more profound and subtle than the presentation of selflessness that is found within the sutta that the other two school of thought, Babasi and Sofandika, that they rely on, in the sutta they rely on, there is explanation of selflessness, but that selflessness explanation is more on gross level. And when we come to middle mind holy school, the presentation of selflessness become more profound, more subtle, than previous ones. So yeah, so that is, but that selflessness, that presentation of emptiness, selflessness, Nagarjuna is saying, that is not the final Buddha's view of the selflessness or emptiness. That is not the final one. That is not the most subtle and most profound and final view of that. And now is presentation of some of the, concept of mind holy schools. How they present all phenomena in three categories, and the imputed. So they in their presentation they divide or categorize all the phenomena into the imputed phenomena, and that is imputed phenomena merely imputed by the mind. There's nothing real there. The dependent, dependent arisings or dependent, that is the conditioned phenomena, conditioned phenomena that depend on cause, condition, especially here dependent phenomena, or dependent here meaning, the mind itself, undisciplined mind, that is the root of all the sufferings. That is the root of all the samsara, that is the dependent, when you call dependent arise or dependent, here dependent, the phenomena. So, there can be a purified dependent phenomena, unpurified dependent phenomena, and especially here, is impure dependent phenomena, which is the mind, undisciplined mind. That's the root of all. And the consummate, in other, ultimate existence, that is the emptiness, and they have only one nature of their own emptiness. Their identities are constructed about the mind. And in their presentation view, they view, there is the dependent phenomena that is empty of that imputed phenomena, because that imputed phenomena is that to perceive that phenomena to exist, externally or particularly from its own side. And that is empty of that imputed phenomena is the ultimate existence or the emptiness, and which is that understanding of that emptiness is key to release from the samsara and all the suffering, So within those three phenomena, they said the imputed phenomena, not inherently existence, but two other phenomena, the dependent phenomena and the ultimate existence, they exist inherently. So that is, so some phenomena, they believe they don't exist inherently, and some phenomena, they exist, they view them to exist inherently. Okay, so so that is how they, and then that has been refuted by the mind-only schools, Nagarjuna. So here in verse number 29, to those who delight in a great vehicle, so those who delight in great vehicle of the middle way school, again, as mentioned, those who have the inclination, predispositions, whose mind have ripened, who are ready to hear the Buddha's final view, or the most profound and most subtle and most profound view. For those vehicles, Buddha taught in brief, selflessness in perfect equanimity. And that mind is primarily unborn. So here he's saying, in the teachings, Buddha, when he was talking about his ultimate views, such as like Heart Sutra, we just read the Heart Sutra, such as those Sutra of Perfection of Wisdom. Then in that, he explained, selfless and perfect equanimity, what it means without, he explained everything is empty of inherent existence to everything without discriminating. Some phenomena existing inherently and some not existing inherently. Just as Mind-only School says, and here he is saying, in those sutras, Buddha didn't say some exist inherently and some didn't exist inherently. In those, Buddha clearly explained all equally, all phenomena, whether it's subject, whether it's object, whether it's conditioned phenomena, whether it's unconditioned phenomena, even the emptiness itself, the samsara, nirvana, all of them equally empty of inherent existence. They all are empty equally, so that is, and so that way he refused this view of mind school where they have this view the emptiness and the dependent phenomena exist inherently, even though they don't they say the imputed phenomena is not inherent existence, but they say two others are inherent existence. And here Nagarjuna is saying, that is not the case, but all of them are MDO. All phenomena are equally, without any discriminating, without differentiating some, not some, all are selfless or MDO, inherent existence. Hmm? And that the mind is primordially unborn, and as we mentioned before, we already mentioned that before, and there are two ways of understanding that, from Sutra point of view and from Tantra point of view, so again, when you try to look from emptiness point of view, then nothing is just as we read Heart Sutra, in emptiness, there's no productions, no cessations, nothing to abandon, nothing to gain or achieve, in emptiness, they are all. So in emptiness, even the primordial mind is unborn and unceasing, and that is the ultimate nature of the mind. So I think maybe today we will I think I will stop it here. I think there is a lot, because I think within a very short few verses, it comes for all the so many view of different school of thought. Because in the monastery, we study for years all this concept. You study what we call four tenets, the four tenets of Buddhist school of thought, different Buddhist school of thought or tenet. And also you study some of the earlier other school of thought as well, and it is a subject of study for years. And not only year, we get 2-3 teaching from our teacher every day, 6 days a week, and we have debate every day, morning, evening, with classmates, with others, intense. And then you read so many commentaries, not just one commentary, many commentaries. So even with that intense, so you study so long. But here, everything's put here in a few. So I think sometimes it might be too much, too much information there. But since I'm reading, I have to go through the verses. So I do have to, I cannot just skip and that. So it could be just an imprint, good imprint. Hopefully maybe some good imprint, even you don't get everything, but at least maybe there is some little bit ideas as we study with each of their presentation or true truth, their presentation of selflessness or emptiness. You can see, all of them present emptiness and selflessness, and all of them present that in order to overcome the delusion. But you can see earlier school of thought, their presentation of emptiness or selflessness is much more gross level. And as you go further, they become more subtle and more profound. So again, and when you see that, then you begin to appreciate Nagarjuna's view, middle way view, because you can compare all the different presentations and then see which one make more sense. Even though there are different school of thought, why we follow Nagarjuna's school of thought, because if you compare all of them, you can see the differences and profoundness in that, and then and so again that helps to have a better appreciations of the view of middle way schools, Nagarjuna, such as Nagarjuna school. So, and also of course it helps us to not only have the gross level of the selflessness, but to have the have realization or even subtle level of selflessness, because with that gross level of under realization of gross level of selflessness or emptiness, we can overcome some of those gross level of delusion. But to overcome very subtle level of the delusion, then you need to have realization of the subtle emptiness or subtle selflessness. If you don't have the subtle realization of subtle selflessness or emptiness, then you can overcome the gross level, but not the more subtle level. So okay, so I will open for some questions, if there's any question. Yeah. So,
Christopher, just so you know, Bade has a question up here too.
Okay, we'll start here and then we'll go to Bade.
I hesitate to even ask a question after the direction we went in, which is pretty profound. This goes back to verse 21, the last two lines: between the dream and wakeful state, there is no difference insofar as the functioning of things is concerned. So, as I said before, Tibet has a very deep-rooted tradition of oracles. And either through prophetic dreams or rituals where utterances occur, actions are taken. So can you explain that in light of these lines?
Thank you. Of course, there are dream yogas, using the dream state for meditations. And definitely, also there are oracles, and I think there are some true oracles, and I think there are fake oracles like everywhere. Sometimes I will personally not be the one who will be able to distinguish which is really the fake one, which is real. Some maybe you might be able to. Some I think it will be very hard, but definitely there are that. And the idea of the oracles is the oracle is something medium, some kind of spirit entering that person's, and that is communicating through that person's. That oracle is the medium for certain spirit, certain protectors, certain unseen beings who are able to, who has capacities in that capacity to see more broader or more things that we cannot see. And so, so through that, then definitely sometimes they follow that. I personal level, I'm not into it. I have some resistance, some suspicious, or not a suspicious, right word. What was the word I'm trying to use?
Skeptic, perhaps skeptic.
Skeptics, yeah.
Skeptic.
I'm a little bit
skeptical.
skeptic, I'm a little skeptic, all of that. But of course, it doesn't mean anything just because I'm a skeptic, obvious, But it also depends, like for example, some lamas or teachers, they rely on some of those oracles, but they said they don't follow everything they say. His Holiness had made a comment. He take that oracle as another information before he make his decisions. He get advice from his advisor, human advisors, when he have to make a big decisions on certain issues, important issues. He will discuss with his advisors, others, discussing what will be the best to progress, or what will be the best decision to make, or to go which way. And sometimes he also take the particular oracles, and also what he has to. And finally, it's not like he follow everything he said, but he take that in consideration or form another informations that maybe there is another information that we human beings cannot see it. So anyway, so there is that that part in terms of oracles, and the dream, of course, there are certain dreams that certain people, also in the dream, there are certain dreams that, that one can check and see certain signs. But also normally, dream is giving an example. And there are certain exceptional dreams, in the scripture, they explain about very vivid and in certain time, and they had to have many conditions. In a certain dream, there is something, but most of the dreams, is just appearance, something maybe before you went to bed, you had certain thought, and then that thoughts kind of play in the dream, or maybe something's you were thinking something, or something. So dream are normally you see in all the Buddhist, all the sutras and all dream is normally giving an example of, what happens in the dream. It didn't really happen in reality. So it is example of, not true what appeared and what really happened. And just an example, I said, in a dream you might be chased by a bull or human beings, but there is no, and you might be running and you might have all this fear and all of that, but there's no real bull chasing you. So it is just a dream. So that is the example that they give the being not true and false example of false as a dream. And like, okay. But those dreams, as I said, I don't know. You have to talk with someone who is specialized in that kind of dream. I'm not as specialized in that dream, so I cannot. I'm not the person who can give you the right answer for that. Unfortunately, yeah. And yes, and there was any other questions there?
Yes, Geshe. Bade asks, by placing such importance on the mind, does the mind-only school believe that the mind exists from its own side? If so, does this mean that in that school, the mind exists independently and never changing, which would also violate the law of karma, since the mind would not change as a result of causes and conditions?
In mind only school thought?
Yes.
In view?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yes, Geshe.
One of the problem with rest of the Buddhist school, except for the middle way school, is that rest of the schools, to establish something that exists, when you try to find within the object, you have to find somewhere. If you cannot find, then they cannot, they cannot establish something to exist. That is their kind of view, How can you say something exists if you try to find and you cannot find it? Then what is different between dream state like that? There is no, in dream state, you try to find a bull, but there's no bull there chasing you. And so, or there is another bull here now chasing. So, so what is the difference? So the difference is that in this bull, if you try to find where it is, you will be able to pinpoint and find that. Otherwise, you cannot say this bull exists. And so that is kind of same with all the kind of more or less, and that's why other schools say they know how things exist inherently. And in Mind Holy School, when it comes to the external objects, that is the same exercise they do. Even the most subtle or the most smallest particle, and they say, we did the analyze before, directional exercise is what is that particle is right, the south side, north side, east side, west side, top side, down side. Is if you try to do that, you cannot pinpoint and say this is this particular each of this side is that particular particles, and therefore that is how that particle cannot exist from its own side. And so that is how they refute, but when it comes to the self in the mind, they still find within, when they analyze, then they think, in the Mind Holy School, the self is found in what they call the mind basis of all. And that mind basis of all that continue from one life to another life. And that is present there all the time. Even when you're deep meditation, when you are deep sleep, even when you are in coma, unconscious, still that mind will be always there. And therefore they find, when you try to find the person or the self, they find within that. And therefore they think it exists from its own side, because it is findable there. And so unlike the external object. And that same is the consciousness. If they try to find consciousness, then they find within the stream or the continuity of that consciousness. They don't view the consciousness as a permanent. They view consciousness as impermanent, ever changing, but it's one continuity leading to the next continuity, and there's continuity of that. Is ever moving, ever changing. So is impermanent in that nature. But so you find so therefore that is why they say it exists from its own side. And they will not say consciousness is independent. They will say consciousness is interdependent. They will say consciousness is interdependent. They will say consciousness is dependent on the previous cause and conditions, impermanent. So their understanding of, for them, there's no conflict, something to exist interdependently and also exist, interdependently. Something to exist independently at the same time exist from its own side. They don't have that conflict, or they don't have that contradictions. For a middle way school, that is contradiction. Something existing interdependently cannot be inherently existing or exist from its own side. There is contradiction. So that is the difference, So I think we will come. I think maybe next verse. I think Nagarjuna will try to refute this idea of the mind existing inherently or from its own side, by using their own logic, how they use that logic to the external objects, how they use that to refute external objects. The Nagarjuna use same logic to the mind, and then saying, Okay. So, okay. So I think we'll have we can do a dedications today. I can have more questions and more in the future.
Kewadi nu duda lama change du ne do chikan malupa de sala John Cho Sam Cho Rinpoche Ma Ke Pa Nam Te Gyurchi Ke Wa Nam Pa Me Pa Yang Gong Ne Gong Du Pel War Shu. Shayla, could you please go to His Holiness's prayer? Thank you. Or Rinpoche's, that's fine as well. Thank you. Peerless teacher and assembly of the children of the victorious ones, Shavakas and Pratyeka Buddhas, victorious Losang, father and sons, along with the lineage masters, of the objects of refuge of infinite lands, please bestow the virtue and goodness of accomplishing this prayer here and now. Holding and spreading the Muni's precious and complete teachings through explanation and practice. You wore the armor of patience that is never discouraged. Incomparable, Venerable Guru, to you I make request. While striving single-pointedly for the sake of the victorious one's teachings, the sole gateway through which all benefit and happiness emerge. For all mother living beings, you suddenly departed to peace. What a great loss. Nevertheless, through the undeceiving truth of the blessings of the ocean of the three jewels and the great waves of Bodhichitta of the children of the victorious ones, may the smile of a reincarnation swiftly beam in glory for fortunate disciples.
Okay.
Rave Korwe Jinkande, Pendam Dewa Malu Jingwe Ne. Ten rings one ring gatso yinja pesi te bardu ten gyur.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you. Thank you. Good night. Thank you.